I reviewed a client's portfolio last month. $800,000 spread across 6 different accounts. 60% was sitting in cash. 30% was in high-fee, actively managed funds. 10% was in individual stocks she'd bought years ago and forgotten about. This misallocation was costing her $35,000 per year in lost growth, and she had no idea. Today, I'm showing you what strategic asset allocation actually looks like for women over 50, and the costs I see constantly. Let's get into it. Most of the women I work with learned one rule about asset allocation: your age in bonds. So if you're 55, you should have 55% in bonds and 45% in stocks. If you're 60, it's 60% bonds and 40% stocks. This rule was created in the 1950s when life expectancy was 68 and bond yields were 5 to 6%. Today, you're likely to live to 85 or 90, and bonds have spent the last 15 years yielding close to nothing. The old rule doesn't work in this environment. Here's what happens when you follow it anyway. You're 55 with $500,000 in retirement savings. You allocate 55% to bonds, $275,000, and 45% to stocks, $225,000. Over the next 15 years to age 70, your bonds return 3% annually. Your stocks return 8% annually. Result? Your portfolio grows to about $950,000. Now, same scenario, but with a more appropriate 35% bonds, 65% stocks. Result? Your portfolio grows to $1.15 million. That's a $200,000 difference from one allocation decision. But here's the problem. Most high-earning women aren't just following the old rule. They're doing something worse. They're sitting on massive cash positions because they don't know what else to do. The typical portfolio I see when a successful woman comes to me: 401k, 300k allocated conservatively in heavy bonds or target date fund. IRA, 150k, half cash because she doesn't want to risk it. Taxable brokerage, 200k, mostly cash with a few random stocks. Checking and savings, 150k, just in case. That's a total of 800k as in assets, but effectively 50% plus in cash. This isn't conservative. This is wealth erosion. Cash loses value to inflation every single year. At 3% inflation, that 400k in cash loses $12,000 in purchasing power annually. Over 15 years, you've lost $180,000 to inflation alone. That's before we even calculate the opportunity cost of what that money could have earned if properly invested. So let me show you what proper allocation looks like. The right asset allocation depends on 3 things: your age, your timeline to retirement, and your risk capacity. Let me break down what I recommend by age bracket. From ages 50 to 55, 70 to 75% in stocks, 20 to 25% in bonds, 5% in cash. Why? You still have 10-15 years to retirement. You need growth. Stocks are your friend here, not your enemy. From ages 55 to 60, 65 to 70% in stocks, 25 to 30% in bonds, 5% in cash. Why? You're in the home stretch, but you're not retiring tomorrow. You still need that 5 to 10 years of growth before you start withdrawing. Ages 60 to 65, 60 to 65% in stocks, 30 to 35% in bonds, 5% in cash, plus 1 or 2 years expenses in stable funds. Why? Now you're protecting downside while maintaining growth. You want enough stability that a market crash in your first year of retirement doesn't derail everything, but you still need growth for the next 25 to 30 years. Notice what you don't see: 50% in cash, because that's not a strategy. That's fear dressed up as prudence.
And by the way, if you're finding this helpful, I share strategies like this every single week. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And definitely share it with others.
Now let's get more specific about what stocks and bonds actually mean. For the stocks portion of your portfolio, here's what I recommend: 60% U.S. stocks, broad market index like S&P 500 or total stock market. 30% international stocks, developed markets. 10% emerging markets, higher risk, higher growth potential, all in low-cost index funds. Expense ratios under 0.10%. No actively managed funds charging 1% plus. For the bonds portion, 60% intermediate-term government corporate bonds, 30% short-term bonds for stability. 10% inflation-protected securities. TIPS. Again, low-cost index funds. You don't need complexity here. Now, the most important part: this isn't one size fits all. Your specific allocation depends on your circumstances. Adjust up in stocks if you have a pension or guaranteed income, you plan to work past 65, you have significant assets relative to spending needs, you're comfortable with volatility. Adjust down in stocks if you're planning to retire in the next 1 to 2 years, you have no other income sources, you're already behind on retirement savings. Market volatility causes you genuine distress and bad decisions. That last one is critical. If a 20% market drop causes you to panic sell and lock in losses, you need to be more conservative. Better to have slightly less growth than to make catastrophic decisions in the moment. But, and this is important, you need to know the difference between being appropriately cautious and being irrationally fearful. If you're keeping 50% in cash because the market feels high, that's not strategy. That's emotion. And emotion-based decisions are costing you tens of thousands of dollars per year. Setting your allocation is step one. Maintaining it is step two. And this is where most women fail. Here's what happens. You set your allocation at 65% stocks, 35% bonds. Great. Then stocks have a good year and grow 15%. Bonds grow 3%. Now your portfolio is 70% stocks, 30% bonds. You do nothing. The next year, same thing. Now you're at 73% stocks. You do nothing. Then the market crashes 30%. Your portfolio, which was supposed to be 65% stocks, is now 73% stocks going into the crash. You lose significantly more than you needed to. This is called portfolio drift, and it's dangerous because it means your risk is creeping up without you noticing until it's too late. The solution is rebalancing, systematically bringing your portfolio back to your target allocation. Method 1, calendar rebalancing. Set a date, say December 31st every year, and rebalance no matter what. Pros, simple, automatic, no thinking required. Cons, might rebalance when not needed, triggering unnecessary taxes. Method 2, threshold rebalancing. Only rebalance when your allocation drifts more than 5% from target. If you're targeting 65% stocks, you only rebalance when it hits 60% or 70%. Pros, tax efficient, only acts when needed. Cons, requires monitoring. I prefer threshold rebalancing because it's more tax efficient, but either method is better than never rebalancing at all. Rebalancing can trigger taxes if you do it wrong. Here's how to do it right. Tactic 1. Rebalance in retirement accounts first. 401ks and IRAs don't trigger taxes when you buy and sell inside them, so do all your rebalancing trades there first. Tactic 2. Use new contributions. Instead of selling winners to buy losers, direct your new contributions to the underweighted asset class. Portfolio is 70% stocks, but should be 65%. Stop contributing to stocks and put everything into bonds until you're back in balance. Tactic 3. Harvest losses in taxable accounts. If you need to sell in a taxable brokerage account, sell positions that are at a loss. You can use those losses to offset other gains or income. Bottom line, rebalancing is non-negotiable. If you're not doing it at least once a year, you don't actually have an allocation strategy. You have an allocation suggestion that you ignore, and that's going to cost you. Let me walk you through the 3 most common mistakes I see and what to do about each one. Mistake number 1, too much cash. If you have more than 6 months of expenses sitting in cash, you have too much. The fix? Keep 3 to 6 months in a high-yield savings account as your emergency fund. Everything else goes into your investment allocation. I know that feels scary, but remember, you can access invested money in 2 to 3 days if you need it. The liquidity difference is minimal, but the growth difference is massive. Mistake number 2, home country bias. This is when 95% of your stocks are U.S. companies. The U.S. stock market is about 60% of global market cap, yet most American investors have 90% plus in U.S. stocks. The fix? Allocate 30-40% of your stock holdings to international markets. When the U.S. underperforms, and it will eventually, you want exposure to growth elsewhere. Mistake number 3, individual stock positions. You own Apple stock because you love your iPhone, Amazon because you shop there constantly. A few other sure things. Individual stocks are 15-20% of your portfolio. Unless you're a professional stock analyst with hours per week to dedicate to research, you shouldn't be picking individual stocks. And even if you are, you probably shouldn't. The data is clear. 90% of active managers, professionals whose full-time job is picking stocks, underperform the market over 15 plus years. If they can't beat the market with teams of analysts and millions in resources, why do you think you can? The fix. Sell your individual positions and move the proceeds into broad market index funds. Yes, you might trigger capital gains taxes. Run the numbers. Even with the tax hit, you're likely better off long-term with proper diversification. If you really want to keep 1 or 2 stocks for fun, fine, but cap it at 5% of your total portfolio. Everything else goes into diversified index funds. Quick check. What percentage of your portfolio is currently sitting in cash? Drop a comment. No judgment, just curiosity. Are you at 10%, 30%, 50%? And if you're new here, I'm Jill Collins. I'm a wealth strategist who helps professional women in their 50s and 60s with six-figure incomes gain absolute clarity with their money. No jargon, no judgment, just systematic education that works. Next week, I'm breaking down the successful lifestyle that's quietly destroying wealth, even for women earning 200K plus. This one's going to be controversial, but it needs to be said. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.